was the one who was true to his promises, meaning he was keeping his promises, and he was a prophet and messenger. So Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala first mentions that he was keeping his promises. If he wasn't like that, if he was not keeping his promises, Allah would not make him to be a prophet. Like the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, our prophet, if he wasn't honest, if he wasn't ameen, Allah would not make him a prophet, to be selected to be a guidance for all humanity. So one of the true characters of those they enter Jannah on the day of judgment, one of the characters or one of their behaviors among others is those people, they keep their promises. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. These people, they enter Jannah, are those, they keep their trusts, they keep their promises, and they're attentive. They take care of their promise. They don't neglect when they promise something. And let's see how the Prophet ﷺ was like that. He was keeping his promises. As I promised you in a few khutbah ago, that I will mention some of the good characters, some of the akhlaq of the Prophet ﷺ to tell others. That's how the Prophet ﷺ was. And I have to keep my promise here. So hereby I will mention two short stories of the Prophet ﷺ, how he was keeping his promises. There are a lot of stories about his life, and he was really wafi, he was really loyal to Allah Azza wa Jal, to his wives and to his companions. But here I'll mention two stories about the Prophet ﷺ, and he was keeping his promises not just with Muslims, not just with non-Muslims, peaceful non-Muslims, rather with those they were at war with him. They were his enemy. The Prophet ﷺ kept his promises even with those people. In the first story, Hudayfa ibn Iman, who was one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, he and his dad, his father, he says that we wanted to go to migrate to Medina in the time of the Prophet. And when the people of Mecca, they knew that we are trying to go to travel, we're planning to go to Medina, they kept us. When they kept us, they said, we won't let you go to Medina, because if you go there, you will fight against us once again. You will fight with Muhammad, and you will be our enemy once again. He said, he was under pressure. They said, no, we are not going to fight with the Prophet, with Muhammad. Even they mentioned Muhammad to show others, to pretend that they are still non-Muslims. We are just going to there, just for the Medina, for the sake of Medina, the city of Medina, not for the sake of fighting with the Prophet, with Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And still they didn't believe them. They said, no, you have to promise us. That's the only reason you go there. And they said, under pressure, they said that we are going there, and they said a promise by Allah Azza wa Jalla, we promise that we are not going there for the sake of the Prophet. And then they let them go. When they went to Medina, they met the Prophet ﷺ, and they told the story, that's what happened. And at that time was the time of battle of Badr. It was about to happen. And the Prophet ﷺ was really in need to add one person to his army. So when they said that we promised them by Allah not to go to war against them, the Prophet ﷺ said to them, go. And we keep our promises. And instead of that, we rely on Allah Azza wa Jal to make us victorious at the end. So the Prophet ﷺ at that time, he kept his promise, even with non-believers. Because when you keep your promise, it's not about others. When you keep your promise with whether they are Muslims, non-Muslims, whether these people your enemies or your lovers, anything. It's about you. It's about keeping yourself on the true nature, to be a true Muslim, to stay that you are a true believer in all the different circumstances. It's not about those people, whether those people you give promise to them, whether they are Muslims or not. It's about you being a true Muslim in different conditions, different circumstances. And another story, the Prophet ﷺ made an agreement, covenant with people of Mecca. Just 5 years after what happened after the battle of Badr. In the Hudaybiyah, they with non-Muslims, with people of Mecca, they made an agreement. One of the things in this covenant was that any person who comes from who escapes from people of Mecca in Mecca, who becomes a Muslim and he migrates to Medina, Muslims should bring him back. This person should come back to non-Muslims to go under torture and all the things that people of Mecca, they were torturing Muslims. That's one of the conditions, one of the things. And at that time, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala decided that one of the Muslims, he escaped himself from Mecca and he came to Muslims at the time of making agreement, covenant. So, and that person who was escaped himself, he became a Muslim, his name was Abu Jandal. Abu Jandal, this person, he was the son of the person who was representative of Kuffar. His name was Suhail ibn Amr. So when Suhail ibn Amr, he was making agreement on behalf of Kuffar, when he saw this, he saw his son, he said, "Oh Muhammad, this is the first case, that you should apply the rules of this covenant. You should give us this person and we will bring him back to Mecca." The Prophet ﷺ asked him to just make an exemption for this. He said, "No, I will not let this person to go." So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Okay." And he said to Abu Jandal, "Go back to Mecca." While he escaped himself and using every way just to go out, just to escape himself from under torture. He was not to showing that he's not a Muslim. No, and the Prophet ﷺ said, "No, because we made an agreement, because we have to keep our promise that you have to go back there." And he was saying, "Oh Muslims, how can you make me back once again to Mecca? How can you telling me that I have to go back to Mecca?" But the Prophet ﷺ told him that this is our promise, that we should keep our promises. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will make one day will make you and others like you released from under their hands. And look at this, brothers. Compare the morals, compare the good behaviors of the Prophet ﷺ to our situation that we have now. Not keeping promises became a phenomenon among us. It's something really sad that you see we as Muslims, a lot of Muslims, we may trust non-Muslims. Let's say they in this country, they are from originally Europeans. We may trust them more than trusting Muslims. Because, for example, if you have a project doing something, if you ask a non-believer in this country to do this for you in an amount of time, he keeps his promise and he's doing this. He finishes the project on time. But if you, maybe a non-Muslim, a Muslim may not do that. May say that, may delays this and delays, and then he lies, then he betrays. So how a Muslim be like that? While the Prophet ﷺ says that 3 signs, this is really a frightening hadith, scaring hadith. He says, you may know, I believe that most of you know this hadith. The signs of hypocrite are 3. One of them, when he speaks, he lies. When he gives promises, he breaks his promise. When he is entrusted, he betrays. And these 3 things are really overlapping with each other. Because the one who really breaks his promise is really lying also, betraying too. So the Prophet ﷺ, in another riwayah, he says that if someone who has these behaviors together, he says that he is a pure munafiq, pure hypocrite. That's what the Prophet ﷺ says. In another hadith he says even he's still a pure munafiq, even if he prays, even if he fasts fasts, even if he claims he's a Muslim. And when ulama al-sunnah, the scholars of sunnah, when they see this hadith, it's something that's really confusing for them, because in the aqidah of al-sunnah, that any person who is doing major sins is still a Muslim, is in the circles of being a Muslim. But this hadith indicates that this person may go out of Islam, may not stay as a Muslim. So it's really, they give a lot of explanations to say that is like that. But I'm not saying that he's a kafir, but we should be careful that this person may be on the edge of being kafir. So it's really something that we should keep our promises as the Prophet ﷺ did. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات اللهم ارحم موتانا واشف مرضانا وسلم أحياءنا وآمن روعاتنا اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم انصر المسلمين المستضعفين في كل مكان اللهم انصر المسلمين المستضعفين في كل مكان ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم أقم الصلاة